The rain fell in a steady rhythm, drumming on polished boots, black umbrellas, and the rows of white headstones stretching into the mist. Soldiers in dress uniform stood at attention, their medals glinting faintly against the gray morning sky. It was not just another military funeral, this was the burial of General Marcus Hale, a man decorated with more honors than most could count. To the nation, he was a symbol of valor, sacrifice, and leadership. To those who served under him, he was more than that. He was a mentor, a father figure, the man who never left a soldier behind. The solemn ceremony was unfolding with rigid precision. A flag-draped casket rested atop the stand. A 21-gun salute was being prepared. Families, dignitaries, and commanders filled the front rows. There was a weight in the air, a heaviness of grief mixed with the respect reserved only for a man of Hale's stature. But while the honor guard moved in flawless order, something unusual stirred at the cemetery gates. An old man in a worn, faded coat shuffled forward. His face was weathered by time and hardship. His boots, cracked and muddy, stood out against the polished shoes around him. In his hands, he carried a battered cap with a single patch sewn on the side, an emblem from a division long forgotten by most. He tried to step past the guards at the entrance, but two officers in crisp uniforms blocked his way. "Sir, this is a restricted ceremony," one said firmly. "I knew the general," the old man replied, his voice carrying both fragility and iron. "I served with him. I have to be here." The younger guard shook his head. "I'm sorry. Only invited family and registered military personnel are allowed inside." The old man's eyes flickered. For a moment, the pain of rejection cut deeper than the years had etched on his face. He gripped his cap tighter. "You don't understand," he whispered. "He saved my life." The guards were unmoved. Protocol was protocol. They placed a firm hand on his shoulder and tried to turn him away. But just as the old man's figure began to fade into the mist behind the rows of guards, a sharp voice cut through the air. "Hold it right there." The command was crisp, unmistakable. The funeral procession paused. The rifles lowered. Heads turned. From the crowd, a tall figure in a four-star general's uniform stepped forward. His chest carried ribbons and medals that told stories of decades of service. His gaze was fierce but steady, and when he spoke, every soldier present fell silent. "That man," the general said, pointing toward the frail figure, "comes in." The guards froze. "But sir, he isn't." "I said," the general interrupted, his voice like steel, "he comes in." Murmurs rippled through the crowd as the four-star general himself walked toward the gates. He approached the old man, studied his face for a long moment, and then saluted him. The cemetery, the soldiers, the entire audience held its breath. The general's voice dropped, heavy with respect. "You must be Corporal Daniel Reeves." The old man's eyes widened in disbelief. You know my name." "Of course I do," the general replied. "General Hale spoke of you. Often. He never forgot you." At those words, the atmosphere shifted. The guards who once stood like stone now lowered their eyes in shame. The crowd leaned forward, eager to understand. Who was this man that even Marcus Hale, a hero to the nation, remembered until his dying breath? The four-star general placed a hand on Reeves's shoulder and guided him forward. "Come, you belong here." And as the frail old man stepped into the ceremony, the story that bound him to the great General Hale began to unfold. Decades earlier, the world was in chaos. A foreign war had dragged countless young men into a place of mud, blood, and endless gunfire. Corporal Daniel Reeves was barely 20 at the time, a boy forced to become a soldier. He had been scared, hungry, and convinced he would never live to see home again. And then there was Marcus Hale. Back then, Hale wasn't a general. He was a captain, commanding a unit through some of the deadliest battles of the war. Reeves had been assigned to him. One night, Reeves's unit was ambushed in a valley shrouded by fog. Gunfire tore through the darkness. Soldiers fell one by one. Reeves remembered the terror, the deafening noise, the smell of smoke and blood. He had been hit, a bullet tearing into his leg. He collapsed into the mud, unable to move, watching as enemy forces closed in. Panic surged through him. He knew it was over. But then a shadow appeared in the chaos. Captain Hale. Against all odds, Hale charged into the line of fire. Bullets tore past him, but he didn't falter. With sheer force of will, he lifted Reeves onto his back. Reeves remembered the heat of the man's strength, the grit in his teeth as he carried him step by agonizing step. "We don't leave our own behind," Hale growled through the chaos. Reeves had begged him to go, to save himself, but Hale refused. He fought off attackers, carried Reeves across that cursed valley, and brought him back to safety. Reeves would never forget the way Hale collapsed after, bloodied but still alive, eyes burning with determination. That night, Hale saved not just Reeves's life, but his soul. From that moment on, Reeves had dedicated himself to honoring the man who had given him a second chance at life. Even when he left the service, even when he returned to a quiet, forgotten existence, he never forgot the name Marcus Hale. Back at the funeral, as Reeves was guided to the front row, soldiers shifted in their seats, humbled. He clutched his cap, tears filling his eyes as the casket came into view. When it was time for eulogies, the four-star general himself took the podium. His voice carried through the rain-soaked air. General Marcus Hale was a warrior, a leader, and a patriot. But more than that, he was a man who never turned his back on those who depended on him. There are countless stories of his bravery, but there is one in particular that I must share today. He paused, his gaze drifting to Reeves. In the middle of battle, when death was certain, Hale carried a wounded soldier to safety. He risked his life, not for medals, not for recognition, but because that was who he was. That soldier is here with us today. Corporal Daniel Reeves. All eyes turned. Reeves felt every face upon him, but more than that, he felt the memory of that night, the weight of being alive because of another man's courage. The general continued, his voice breaking. Hale told me that saving Reeves was the proudest moment of his life, not his promotions, not his victories, not his medals, but the act of carrying one man through the fire. A hush fell across the cemetery. Soldiers who had trained their hearts to steel now felt tears streaking down their faces. The families clutched each other tighter. The sound of weeping filled the silence between raindrops. When the rifles fired their salute and the bugle played taps, Reeves stood, his frail body trembling, and saluted with every ounce of strength he had left. The four-star general stepped beside him, and without hesitation, mirrored the salute. At that moment, it wasn't ranks or titles that mattered. It was a bond of sacrifice, of loyalty, of remembering what it means to serve. And as the flag was folded with perfect precision and handed to Hale's widow, Reeves whispered to himself through his tears, "Thank you, Captain. I never forgot. And I never will." The rain lightened, and the clouds began to part. For a moment, a shaft of sunlight broke through, touching the casket as though heaven itself was honoring the fallen soldier. And those who were there that day, soldiers, civilians, leaders alike, would never forget the sight of the forgotten old man, standing at the side of generals, carrying a story of courage that outlived the man who inspired it. If this story touched your heart, share it with others. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories that remind us of sacrifice, loyalty, and the power of never forgetting those who stood by us.